And
Do you know there's no way?
No,
There's
well,
Quiet! Please be quiet for a minute.
yes, sir.
Good.
I am not really used to this. Will you please be quiet for a minute while I talk to this gentleman? I'm on the show.
Johnny Carson's Tonight Show was a world of laughter, charm, and perfectly timed chaos. But some guests took it to a whole new level.
My son said, she was on Johnny Carson's show one time. She came there with a cat on her lap. And she said to you, "Do you want to pet my..." You said, "I'd love to if you'd remove that damn cat." Is it true?
From dazzling stars swaying on stage to legendary geniuses slurring their words, live television became a roller coaster of unpredictability. These 8 guests drank, stumbled, and sometimes shocked the audience, leaving Carson scrambling to keep control. Their wild antics are unforgettable, outrageous, and sometimes unwatchable, but they also define the untamed magic of late-night TV. Johnny Carson and the Late Night Game. Johnny Carson was more than just a television host. He was a master of timing, charm, and improvisation, guiding audiences through nearly 3 decades of late-night television. The Tonight Show, starring Johnny Carson, became a staple of American life, a place where millions tuned in to laugh, be entertained, and sometimes witness chaos unfold. What made Carson unique was not only his wit, but his ability to handle the unpredictable. Every guest, from Hollywood legends to politicians and unknown talents, was treated with the same polished ease. Behind his calm smile was a sharp mind capable of steering any conversation, no matter how wild or uncomfortable. In the studio, everything ran like a well-oiled machine. The crew knew their roles down to the smallest detail. Teleprompters, cue cards, and camera angles were meticulously planned. Yet Carson understood that live television always carried the risk of surprise. He had an instinct for timing, knowing exactly when to crack a joke, when to interrupt a wandering guest, and when to let moments breathe for maximum effect. This ability became critical when guests arrived under the influence, turning what could have been disastrous moments into unforgettable television. Carson's relationship with his guests was complex. He was kind and generous to those who respected the show, yet firm with those who went too far. Some stars adored the spotlight he provided, while others could not handle the stage. He often had to balance entertainment with tact, keeping the show flowing while making sure the audience remained engaged. Live TV demanded quick thinking and patience, especially when alcohol blurred a guest's focus and eroded their inhibitions. The Tonight Show was not just about interviews. Carson's segments included comedy skits, musical performances, and playful games. He had the rare talent of blending humor with charm, so that even awkward or chaotic moments became memorable for viewers. Over time, Carson developed a sixth sense for reading people. He could tell instantly when someone was nervous, intoxicated, or off-script. His quick reactions and calm demeanor turned potentially embarrassing encounters into legendary moments that fans still talk about decades later. But while most nights were smooth and entertaining, a few became the stuff of legend. These were the nights when alcohol took over, when a guest could not follow a simple question, when the carefully constructed rhythm of the show collapsed into confusion. Johnny Carson faced these moments with grace, humor, and sometimes desperation, knowing that the audience was watching every second. The excitement was in not knowing what might happen next, and Carson's reactions were as much a part of the performance as the guests themselves. And so, the stage was set for some of the most infamous appearances in Tonight Show history. The first guest to stumble into chaos was a man whose genius could not protect him from embarrassment, a man whose brilliance would clash with alcohol in the most unforgettable way. Truman Capote. Truman Capote was one of America's most brilliant writers. He was known for his sharp wit, his unusual voice, and his small frame. He wrote In Cold Blood and many other famous works. But when he came on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson while drunk, his brilliance could not save him from disaster. On that fateful night, Capote stumbled onto the stage. His movements were unsteady, his speech was slurred, and his eyes looked unfocused. He seemed to be carrying more than just his well-known charm. Under the studio lights, his voice wavered. He flitted from topic to topic, sometimes making grand statements, sometimes trailing off into nothing. The audience could sense something was wrong, and Carson felt it too. Carson tried to guide him gently, asking questions about his work. But Capote's mind seemed to wander. He muttered about Montgomery Clift, another actor, and at one point he leaned forward as if to sit on Ed McMahon's lap. Ed McMahon, his usual warm self, froze. Carson attempted to redirect the conversation. He laughed. He paused. He tried to anchor Capote to something coherent. But Capote kept drifting, spilling water on himself, not realizing it, then ignoring the mess. The more Capote slurred, the more the studio fell silent. It was uncomfortable. It was tragic. Here was a literary genius, someone who could spin beautiful, vivid sentences. But now he could barely finish a thought. The magic was gone. What remained was confusion. Carson, always gracious in front of the camera, tried to handle the chaos. He asked Capote to repeat himself. He tried to make light of some of the slurred lines, but it was clear they could not rescue this moment. As Capote's rambling continued, his creativity seemed buried beneath his intoxication. He would shift from one idea to another, then circle back, then change direction again. At times, he seemed to forget he was even on The Tonight Show. His voice dropped. He paused. He stared. The studio lights probably felt too bright, the microphone too loud. But he could not steady himself. Finally, after several tortured minutes, Carson made the call. He cut to a commercial break. The audience released a quiet exhale. It was awkward, it was painful, but under the circumstances, it was the only option. Capote, for his part, seemed unaware of how badly things had gone. He left the stage with that odd mixture of dignity and disorientation. That night became one of the more painful interviews in Tonight Show history. It was a clash between brilliance and self-destruction. Capote had come on as a celebrated author, expecting to charm the audience with his wit. Instead, he became a cautionary tale. His intoxication stripped away the carefully maintained image of elegance and intellect. In that moment, he was not the confident storyteller. He was a broken man. But if Capote was chaos in slow motion, the next guest didn't just stumble. She stormed the entire show in high heels, and things got wild fast. Shelley Winters. Shelley Winters was a Hollywood legend, known for her talent, her fiery personality, and her love of attention. She was glamorous, outspoken, and unpredictable. But when she arrived on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson while drunk, she became a force of chaos. Unlike anything the audience had seen before, Winters had a reputation for showing up under the influence. The Tonight Show team even developed a special backstage plan for her appearances. Everyone knew she might interrupt, shout, or act in ways that were completely unplanned. Still, nothing could truly prepare them for the night she stormed the stage in 1974. From the moment she appeared under the bright lights, Winters dominated the set. She spoke over Carson and the other guests, often interrupting questions and laughing at her own remarks. She reached across the stage to grab a young actor's knee, and the actor froze, unsure whether to laugh or recoil. Carson, always composed, tried to steer the conversation back on track, but Winters ignored him completely. She had her own rhythm and was determined to follow it. At one point, she grabbed Carson's cue cards and threw them across the stage. Papers fluttered in the air as the audience gasped. Carson's smile tightened for a moment, showing a rare hint of frustration. He had handled many difficult guests before, but Winters was relentless. She continued to shout, joke, and lean into the cameras as if the Tonight Show stage were her personal playground. Despite her chaotic behavior, Winters had a strange charm. She laughed loudly at her own jokes, and the audience could not look away. Her energy was both magnetic and terrifying. Carson tried to manage her carefully, asking questions that might slow her down, making gentle jokes to diffuse the tension, and occasionally stepping back to let her words fill the silence. It was a delicate dance, balancing professionalism and patience with a guest who had clearly had too much to drink. Winters' appearance that night became one of the most infamous episodes in Tonight Show history. She proved that celebrity and alcohol could combine in ways that were unpredictable and sometimes dangerous. The segment ended eventually, but the memory lingered. Fans talked about it for years, laughing, cringing, and shaking their heads at the wild woman in high heels who had taken over the set. Winters may have been loud and unstoppable, but the next guest's appearance was heartbreaking. He was beloved by millions, a symbol of charm and control, yet his drunkenness revealed the vulnerability behind the smile. What happened next shocked viewers and changed the way they looked at their favorite entertainer, Dean Martin. Dean Martin was the ultimate entertainer, known as the King of Cool. He charmed audiences with his smooth voice, easy smile, and casual persona. Part of his appeal was his lovable, tipsy act. Martin often appeared on stage with a glass in hand, singing off-key or joking about his drinking. Fans laughed, assuming it was all part of the show. But by the mid-1970s, the line between performance and reality had begun to blur. On one memorable night in 1976, Martin arrived at The Tonight Show in a condition that went far beyond his usual playful act. He stumbled on stage, blinking under the bright lights, and seemed confused about where he was. The audience, expecting jokes and music, immediately noticed something was different. He could barely stand still and kept forgetting where he was supposed to sit. Carson, ever the professional, tried to guide him. He asked simple questions about Martin's career and upcoming projects, but Martin's answers were disjointed. At times, he sang short fragments of songs, starting with enthusiasm, and then abruptly stopping, unable to recall the next line. The humor of the situation was lost on many in the audience, who watched in stunned silence. The persona of the charming, effortless entertainer was breaking down before their eyes. The tension on stage was palpable. Carson leaned forward, trying to anchor Martin with questions, to bring some coherence to the conversation. But Martin kept wandering from topic to topic, often speaking in a soft mumble that required careful listening. He mixed up names, repeated lines, and occasionally laughed at things only he seemed to understand. The crowd's polite chuckles were tinged with concern. The performance that had always been endearing now felt unsettling. It became clear that this was no longer the playful act fans loved. Martin's drinking had crossed a line. The show was designed to entertain, not to expose a star's struggles so openly. Carson navigated the segment with skill, using humor to fill awkward gaps, but even he could not fully rescue the night. The moment lingered as a reminder that fame, charm, and skill could not always mask human weakness. By the end of the appearance, Martin managed to finish the show, but not with the ease he was known for. It was a rare glimpse behind the curtain, a reminder that the public persona of a celebrity often hides complex and vulnerable realities. Fans left the episode talking not about the jokes or songs, but about the shocking vulnerability of a beloved star. While Dean Martin quietly unraveled on stage, the next guest was someone who had always been seen as a figure of control and authority. When he arrived drunk, it shocked the audience in a way that would make them question everything they thought they knew about him, Raymond Burr. Raymond Burr was a symbol of strength and dignity. For years, he had played Perry Mason, the clever, composed lawyer who always solved the case and restored justice. Audiences admired him for his calm authority and sharp intellect. They never expected the man behind the character to stumble in front of millions, but when Burr appeared on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson after drinking, the image of control shattered completely. Burr arrived 40 minutes late, already visibly intoxicated. The audience sensed it the moment he stepped onto the stage. His movements were slow and unsteady, and his eyes did not focus. Carson welcomed him warmly, trying to mask any tension, but it quickly became clear that this would not be a normal interview. Burr's charm and authority were replaced by confusion and aimless chatter. From the start, Burr drifted off topic. He spoke for long minutes about orchids, a subject he loved, but completely ignored Carson's questions. He repeated stories, circled around ideas, and at times paused as if forgetting what he was doing on stage. The audience, expecting wit and intelligence, watched in stunned silence. For a man who had portrayed one of the most composed figures in television history, the contrast was jarring. Carson attempted his usual subtle guidance. He asked simple questions, tried to anchor Burr to familiar topics, and injected light humor to keep the mood manageable. But Burr seemed lost. His responses were slow, his sentences fragmented. At one point, he stared blankly at Carson and asked, "What did you say your name was again?" The audience gasped. This was the legendary Perry Mason, the man who had solved impossible cases, reduced to confusion by alcohol on a live broadcast. The tension in the studio was thick. Crew members exchanged worried glances, unsure how to proceed. Carson had to balance professionalism with patience, keeping the show running while Burr struggled to maintain coherence. He managed to keep the conversation going with clever humor, subtle interjections, and quick thinking. Even so, the moment was unforgettable, and not in the way anyone wanted. Burr's collapse was more than an awkward television moment. It revealed the fragility behind a persona built on confidence and control. Fans who had idolized him were forced to confront the human side of fame. The Tonight Show had once again exposed the unpredictable reality of celebrity life, showing that even the most respected stars could falter when alcohol took over. In the end, Burr left the stage without completing what he had come to do. He was never invited back to the show. The episode became one of the more shocking and memorable appearances in Tonight Show history, a cautionary tale about the limits of composure and the power of alcohol to unmask even the strongest personalities. While Burr fell apart under the bright lights, the next guest proved something surprising. He was brilliant, eloquent, and fully intoxicated at the same time. Orson Welles. Orson Welles was a legend long before he walked onto the Tonight Show stage. He had created Citizen Kane, dazzled audiences with his powerful voice, and amazed the world with his intellect. Welles was known for being sharp, eloquent, and commanding. But when he arrived on Johnny Carson's set after several bottles of wine, the audience was about to witness a different kind of brilliance, one that was both fascinating and completely uncontrollable. From the moment he appeared, Welles dominated the stage. He spoke with force, projecting his deep, resonant voice into every corner of the studio. Carson, experienced as he was, tried to guide him through questions about movies, life, and Welles's extraordinary career. But Welles had his own plan. He launched into long, complex monologues, moving seamlessly from Shakespeare to film theory, from his own opinions to imaginary quotations. When he forgot lines or names, he created new ones on the spot. The audience did not know whether to laugh, marvel, or simply sit in stunned silence. Sweat glistened on Welles's face under the bright lights. Yet, he did not pause. He gestured dramatically, using his hands and body to emphasize every word Carson tried to interrupt at times, asking simple questions or offering a segue to music. But Welles was unstoppable. The man was a hurricane of intellect and alcohol, leaving everyone on the stage scrambling to keep up. Ed McMahon and the crew exchanged uneasy glances, unsure how long the segment would last or how it would end. The audience watched, both entertained and uncomfortable. Welles's performance was unlike anything they had ever seen on live television. He was brilliant and charismatic, but also unpredictable and sometimes incoherent. One moment, he could deliver a stunning insight about cinema. The next, he would forget a simple fact and wander into an unrelated story about his personal life. Carson, with his trademark charm, laughed, nodded, and tried to keep the conversation flowing. But it was clear that Welles was in complete control of the chaos. What made Welles's appearance so unforgettable was the tension between genius and intoxication. He was witty, intelligent, and eloquent. Yet the alcohol made him unsteady, erratic, and sometimes difficult to follow. The combination of his brilliance and unpredictability created a magnetic energy on the stage. The Tonight Show had hosted difficult or drunk guests before, but Welles's appearance was something special. It was brilliant chaos wrapped in charm. By the end of the segment, the audience had been entertained, amazed, and exhausted all at once. Welles left the stage smiling, completely unaware of how exhausting and wild his performance had been. For those watching, Carson had survived another legendary episode, proving again that his skill as a host could handle even the most extreme situations. Yet, even Welles's wine-fueled brilliance could not match the next guest, whose drunken charm and flirtation nearly caused a live television disaster in a way no one expected. Zsa Zsa Gabor. Zsa Zsa Gabor was a Hollywood icon, famous for her beauty, her charm, and her larger-than-life personality. She carried herself as if the world revolved around her. When she arrived on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, she was dressed in sparkling jewels, her hair perfectly coiffed, and a mischievous smile playing on her lips. But what the audience might not have realized was that Zsa Zsa had also enjoyed several drinks before stepping onto the stage. From the moment she appeared, it was clear that Zsa Zsa was unpredictable. She tottered slightly on her heels, her accent thickened, and she laughed loudly at her own jokes. Carson greeted her warmly, but the evening quickly became a challenge to navigate. She leaned toward him, trying to plant kisses, and slid across the couch closer and closer, as if ignoring personal boundaries. Her gestures were playful yet chaotic, keeping everyone on edge. Zsa Zsa grabbed Carson's knee at one point, laughed hysterically, and immediately shifted to boasting about her diamonds and luxurious lifestyle. She told stories, interrupted herself, and returned to old anecdotes that seemed forgotten in the moment. The audience alternated between laughter and stunned silence. Unsure whether to be entertained or concerned, Carson handled the situation with skill, interjecting jokes, steering her back to topics, and trying to maintain some structure. But the unpredictability of Zsa Zsa was relentless. At one point, she nearly fell over while standing mid-story. Threatening to topple into the cameras, Carson quickly steadied her, smiling calmly, while behind the cameras the crew held their breath. Her combination of glamour and intoxication created a spectacle no one could ignore. Zsa Zsa was magnetic. Even in her disoriented state, the audience could not look away from her sparkling jewelry, dramatic expressions, and audacious behavior. The segment became a legendary example of Carson's ability to manage live chaos. While other guests' drunken appearances had been awkward or tragic, Zsa Zsa's was playful, dangerous, and entertaining all at once. She embodied the charm of Hollywood glamour while also revealing how unpredictable alcohol could make even the most polished stars. Carson's calm demeanor contrasted perfectly with her erratic energy, creating television history in the making. By the end of the interview, Zsa Zsa waved, blew kisses to the audience, and left the stage as dramatically as she had arrived. The episode would be remembered not just for her glamour, but for her audacity, and the subtle tension she created kept viewers on the edge of their seats. It was a display of celebrity charm and chaos in its purest form. But if Zsa Zsa was unpredictable and chaotic, the next guest was considered too dangerous for live television. Johnny Carson would refuse to book him, making him the only star ever banned before even stepping onto the stage. Oliver Reed. Oliver Reed was a British actor known for his intensity, charisma, and unpredictable behavior. On screen, he often played complex, sometimes dark characters, and off-screen, he had a reputation for heavy drinking and wild antics. When The Tonight Show considered booking him, the producers were both excited and nervous. Reed's appearances on other programs had become legendary for chaos, and Johnny Carson knew he might be walking into something dangerous. Before any decision was made, Carson reviewed clips of Reed's previous appearances. The tapes were astonishing. Reed had performed flips on live television, argued with hosts, demanded stronger drinks on camera, and even threatened to remove his trousers during a show in Australia. These moments shocked audiences and production crews alike, leaving chaos in their wake. Carson knew that live television allowed no room for error. He had faced difficult or unpredictable guests before, but Reed's reputation suggested a storm unlike any other. After careful consideration, Carson made a rare and unprecedented decision. Oliver Reed would not appear on The Tonight Show. He became the only guest ever banned before even stepping onto the stage. The choice was deliberate and cautious. Carson admired Reed's talent and recognized his undeniable appeal. But he also understood the danger. One wrong move could have derailed the show entirely. For once, Carson prioritized safety and control over star power, proving that experience and judgment sometimes outweigh fame. Reed's absence quickly became legendary in its own right. The story circulated among fans and Hollywood insiders who marveled at the audacity of canceling a guest before his arrival. It was unusual for Carson to refuse a beloved star, but Reed's reputation left no room for compromise. The crew, producers, and audience alike could only imagine the spectacle that might have occurred had he been allowed on stage. The image of drinks, impulsive behavior, and potential disaster lingered in the minds of all who heard the story, feeding the legend of the guest who never came. Even without appearing on the show, Reed's story highlighted the delicate balance Carson had to maintain as a host. He welcomed personalities ranging from gentle and charming to explosive and unpredictable, handling each with patience, wit, and remarkable timing. Yet some guests were simply too volatile. Reed's charisma, fame, and talent could not outweigh the risk his alcohol-fueled antics posed. It was a lesson in the limits of control and the power of unpredictability in live television. The tale of Oliver Reed became a permanent part of Tonight Show lore. fans speculated endlessly about what might have happened, how Carson could have handled Reed's antics, and whether the audience would have been entertained or horrified. It served as a reminder that live television is a high-stakes performance, where even the most experienced host can be tested. Carson's instincts for timing, control, and discretion were essential to keeping the show running smoothly, and Reed's story stands as one of the most famous what-ifs in late-night history. But the final entry on this list of unforgettable guests was not banned. In fact, he became one of Carson's most beloved loose cannons. His drunken brilliance, charm, and unpredictability made him unforgettable, and his performances would be remembered for years. Peter O'Toole. Peter O'Toole was a legendary actor, admired for his commanding presence, charm, and intelligence. He could hold a room with just his voice, and he had earned fame in films like Lawrence of Arabia. On The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, O'Toole brought all of this talent, but he also brought alcohol. Unlike other guests whose drunkenness caused chaos or embarrassment, O'Toole managed to combine charm, wit, and inebriation in a way that was unforgettable. When he arrived, O'Toole admitted he had enjoyed a proper lunch, which in his terms included several scotches. As he settled onto the couch, he began speaking in long, beautifully crafted sentences. He critiqued the studio lights, commented on acting techniques, and launched into stories that had little connection to the questions Carson asked. The audience was captivated. There was a rhythm to O'Toole's speech, even if the content was unpredictable. He was eloquent, amusing, and occasionally absurd, but always entertaining. His words flowed with a certain musicality, drawing listeners into his world where anything seemed possible. Carson, experienced as ever, navigated the segment with skill. He asked questions, tried to steer the conversation, and even engaged in playful banter. But O'Toole often ignored these cues, launching instead into spontaneous demonstrations or dramatic gestures. At one point, he jumped up to teach Carson fencing using a pen as a sword. The audience laughed, leaning forward, unsure whether to worry or cheer. O'Toole's performance was theatrical, mischievous, and unlike anything Carson had seen from previous drunk guests. He turned a simple interview into a one-man show, blending humor, absurdity, and charisma seamlessly. Despite the alcohol, O'Toole retained remarkable clarity in his humor and storytelling. He knew how to hold the audience, how to time a joke, and how to remain magnetic even while wandering off topic. Unlike other inebriated stars who stumbled, offended, or embarrassed themselves, O'Toole seemed to operate in his own delightful universe, and everyone watching was eager to follow him there. His charm transformed potential chaos into performance art. Every slurred word, exaggerated gesture, or sudden story twist added to the sense of unpredictability that made him so captivating. O'Toole's appearances were memorable not because he lost control, but because he embraced it while keeping the audience enchanted. He could drift into eccentricities, yet the underlying brilliance of his mind, always shone through Carson's calm and quick reactions, allowed O'Toole to shine without letting the segment collapse. It was a delicate balance, but one that worked perfectly for this unusual actor. Over the years, O'Toole returned to the show multiple times, each appearance celebrated by fans. He proved that drunkenness did not have to mean disaster. With personality, wit, and intelligence, a guest could be unpredictable and still completely captivating. O'Toole's Tonight Show moments became iconic, remembered not for embarrassment, but for the combination of talent, charm, and slight chaos that only he could deliver. And behind all these legendary disasters and unforgettable performances lies one lingering question. How many more wild, chaotic, or brilliant moments in The Tonight Show history never made it to air. The stories we know are only the tip of the iceberg, leaving fans to imagine countless extraordinary moments that remain unseen. What do you think was the wildest moment on Johnny Carson's Tonight Show? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your favorites.